we talked about complications to multi-tiered systems of support, and more importantly, complications to implementing models such as positive behavior support and response to intervention. And to demonstrate what I've been seeing a lot in schools is I'm going to do a little bit of a demonstration for you about what happens in RTI when it's properly implemented. And right here I have my response to intervention, or PBIS, funnel of fun. And we talked about the funnel, and we talked about how it provides a series of interventions to remediate children's deficits. So each one of these gumballs represents a child, and most children should respond to our first tier of intervention in the green. Okay? But some children have difficulty, and they need more support, and they might fall through the cracks of the green level due to not responding to interventions. And they might fall to the yellow, the tier 2. Some children, though, may have very much difficulty with tier 2, not respond to intervention again, and may need additional supports. And they fall to the tier 3 level. And some children eventually fall all the way to the bottom. Okay? Like that. And that's the bottom. And that means that kids who don't respond to intervention usually need special education. And it's this minute amount of children that may need special education services that have obviously fallen through the cracks of our response to intervention PBIS models or social emotional support models. Now, what I typically see in districts that fail to implement response to intervention properly is that they are using not a funnel-like approach, but they're actually using more of a tube-like approach. So in order to demonstrate this a little bit of a more grander scale, I've developed the response to intervention funnel of fun. Okay, now properly implemented, obviously we know, just like I showed you, kids are going to respond to intervention. Alright, most kids are, and they're not going to make it through. There's my children. No one fell through. They all stayed up at tier 1 level of support. But then we have some other children who might have a little bit more difficulty, as I said before. And obviously these children have fallen to tier 2, just like in the last model of the funnel of fun. But some children just may need some more support. Okay? And obviously some of them have made it to special education. As I was saying, some districts, we're going to have a mess to clean up around the house later, but some districts have what I call a tube-based system. They have not developed proper interventions. They don't have a few students in special education, but they have a lot. And what ends up happening in this system is that here's your school psychologist, and below you have, actually here's your school psychologist, and below you have your special education teachers. And in this model, the tube model that a lot of schools I see are implementing, there is no tier 1, tier 2, tier 3 interventions. In fact, response to intervention and PBIS and social emotional PBIS are just seen as ways to get kids into special education, a tube-based support. Now here's my school psychologist. I'm going to put him here. My school psychologist is here. Alright? And here's my special education teachers. And in a tube-based model of support, if it ever stays, what we find is that we refer and over-refer children, which of course breaks down the structure of multi-tiered systems of support and ends up not letting children receive individualized instruction. So rather than children receiving individualized instruction, the system becomes flooded. So what ends up happening here is I have all my kids, and no matter what type of learner they are, they go right through into special education, which drowns my school psychologists, drowns our teachers, type of instruction, and it floods our special education teachers, it floods our school psychologists, and ultimately it drowns the students in a sea of lost interventions and lost preventative practice models. And as you saw, it also creates a big mess towards our education system. The other alternative model that we talked about was a volcano approach, in which students, interventions and services are in place, but we're pushing those kids through those services as quick as we can. And the right model to do would be the funnel-based approach, in which students receive increasingly intensive levels of support as they do not respond to different types of interventions. And those students who absolutely need special education services are referred because they do not meet the criteria to learn or benefit as much from our general education instruction, and therefore they need specialized, individualized instruction to assist them on their individualized goals. And that's what special education is designed for, and that's what our special education teachers are designed to do. And also they're great interventionists along the way too, in the Tier 1 and Tier 2 levels, but certainly they do have a great expertise in individualizing their instruction towards specific learner needs, and they need to be doing that. And our school psychologists need to be writing comprehensive reports for our special education teachers to base their individualized instruction off of. So right now what I wanted to do is further discuss and differentiate for you between a volcano versus tube-based model, as I think that we can go into a little bit more depth of explaining the difference between the two. So what is the difference between a volcano and tube-based model? Let's get into it and let's take a look. Well, a volcano-based model, as I said before, has interventions in place. They have interventions in place. This is a school that maybe has interventions in place, but although they have interventions in place, students are still being referred to special education, and the interventions aren't being implemented with fidelity. Little data collection is occurring, and they're still being pushed through the system. So interventions are in place, but these children are being pushed through the system. Intervention is in place, but then again, we are not taking the time to provide these students adequate time to respond to intervention. In a tube-based model, we have very little or no interventions in place, and all students are being referred to the highest tier, and our teachers, our general education teachers, are of course not receiving any type of supports from reading interventionists, special education teachers, even the school psychologists. We're just simply referring right to testing, and those students are of course drowning, as we talked before. What makes a volcano model different from a tube model? We kind of got into that just now, but let's get into it even a little bit deeper and see what the real differences are. As we said, when we work with a volcano model, we propose wrong interventions, or no interventions at all, that are based on research and evidence-based practices. We simply refer these children to receive interventions. We view the CST process as a process for a special education referral, and rather than an intervention proposal model in which the team works together to help out the student and remediate those deficits so that the student does not wind up in our special education system. Another difference is with the volcano model is that we collect not enough data. We don't collect enough data, and instead we refer to, you know, maybe 2 to 4 or 4 to 6 or 6 to 8 data points. And all the research has shown that 6 to 8 data points or less really yields some dangerous results in referring our children to special education. Too soon, too early, it does not give the children a long enough time to respond. We have to get rid of that practice. We have to move away from that. 12 to 14 data points or 12 to 14 weeks of intervention is the new recommended norm, as proposed by Shapiro and Chris. We should look into this and keep on evaluating whether that's needed and enough data, and I'm sure there's more studies coming out every day as to how much and how long interventions should be proposed. We're not using curriculum-based measures. I know a lot of schools have really taken to computer adaptive tests like iReady, you know, and those are great, and I love iReady, and I love those computer adaptive tests, but they do not yield the same evidence-based results that curriculum-based measures do. They're not as sensitive, and they should be used in combination with curriculum-based measures. I don't know how, as a school psychologist, we are supposed to really evaluate specific learning disabilities and systematic changes in students' response to intervention without curriculum-based measures. I wish I did know that, and I wish that a computer adaptive test could do that at this time. But to my knowledge, we're still working on that. We're still developing that, and we should be hopeful of that. And we should include these computer adaptive tests as they're great tools. But we should definitely not be getting rid of our Ames, Webb, and Dibble systems just yet, as there's over 40 years of research to support implementation of that. We're not implementing interventions with fidelity in order to push these kids out and push them from the bottom up, and we're pushing them through and up through the top of our intervention-based model. We're not implementing interventions with fidelity. Or we're not using the right interventions. I always use the description of, if I went to the doctor and I was going to the doctor for obesity and he said, Gary, you got to lose some weight. And I said, great. He says, go work out as your intervention. And I said, great. And I go home and I work out for 6 weeks, 8 weeks, 12 weeks, just my arms. And I come back to the doctor and he goes, well, Gary, your arms look really buff and that's great, but you're still overweight and you're still looking to get diabetes. We proposed the wrong intervention. We proposed the wrong intervention to get rid of the diabetes. So it does not work. Although working out your arms is great and it's healthy, it may not lead to decreased risk for cardiac arrest and high cholesterol and diabetes, and that's the funny model that I think of when it comes to proposing the right interventions. And of course, implementing interventions with fidelity as they are intended. That means that we do the implementation of the intervention as it is proposed and how it should be proposed and when it should be proposed. We don't skip over things and certain tasks to hurry up the model and to rush the student through. We take our time through the intervention as it is designed, as it is proposed. And then not being patient. Interventions takes time. It takes time for people to learn behaviors and academics, and it takes our children a while to respond, and we must be patient with them and understand that just because they are not immediately responding to response to intervention or to PBIS or to social emotional learning within the first 8 weeks, that's no reason to refer them to special education right away. What it may mean is that we may need to give them more time. And I cannot tell you how many times I've seen students who maybe by the 10th or 11th or 12th or sometimes 13th week begin to start to show amazing reading improvement due to interventions designed with fidelity and the reading teacher doing a great job helping them out, and maybe even the special education teacher pulling them to the side and doing interventions not as a special education aspect to their instruction, but as an intervention and just adding on some additional support. And any good teacher or any good administrator or any good school for that matter or community agency for that matter has interventionists that are adaptable, and the best teachers are adaptable, and those are the teachers that we need implementing this intervention. And we have some great reading and special education teachers out there. We have some great school psychologists out there and some great administrators. We need adaptability, and we need the ability to be patient for intervention to work and give time for the experts to do their tasks and hone their tasks and implement their tasks with fidelity, with enough data, with the right interventions. And we can't have anything less than that. So that is the difference between the tube and volcano-based model. The volcano-based model is we have the interventions in place, but we're not doing the right things. We're pushing kids through too fast. We're seeing a CST model as just the next step towards a CSE referral rather than as far as remediating deficits. And a tube-based model is we have no interventions in place or very little. And it goes without saying that I think every school right now has either a combination of the two, in that maybe you have a response intervention model set up and you think it's fantastic, but you still do find students being pushed through the system due to parents maybe not understanding how long it takes to respond to intervention, or teachers not understanding how long it takes to respond to intervention. And at the same time, maybe you have no model set up for your social emotional students who are having difficulty, and that's probably the greatest deficit right now in any MTSS model, is how do we set up multi-tiered systems of support social emotional model. And we will talk about that, and this book does explore that, and it explores the research evidence for that and the evidence for that and a best practice approach. But I think that, as far as social emotional students being involved right now as we speak, a number of students have a two-based model. They really don't have that many interventions. And if they do have the interventions, they're certainly not using, the mental health practitioners within their schools as they're supposed to be used. And maybe that's not due to negligence or purposeful negligence, but that's just due to a non-understanding, an innocent non-understanding of what the role of a school psychologist may be under this model, or they've never been used that way. And it's time for us to have those open discussions with our mental health practitioners and teachers, because I know that our teachers have been saying for a long time, hey, we need additional support in mental health. Children are disrupting our classrooms, and we need to know how to address these matters. And we have great resources there, but we're not using them correctly. We have our school psychologists, why don't we use them? And so we should be using them. We're going to talk a little bit about that more too. So again, I thank you folks for joining me. I really do enjoy doing this, and I hope that you're enjoying the book so far. Thank you.